on his debit. And so he goes by the store, and this man said, well, give me the change. I need some change for this store. Give me the $20, take this $20 bill. My dad gave him his change, and he took the $20 bill. But once he went to turn his money in, he found out that this $20 bill was counterfeit. So he goes back to get his $20, and they say to him, where'd you get $25 from? So apparently, I don't know what the details were, but they both pulled out pistols and started shooting. Luckily, my dad survived. He told the owner of the plantation what he had done, and they took my dad and flew him on a crop duster from Mississippi to Memphis, Tennessee, and told my dad that wait there until he sent for him. So when he sent for my dad, he brought him back to Mississippi, and they had his trial on this man's porch. And the man told him that you can stay here, but I don't know if I can protect you. And so therefore we moved from Mississippi to Cincinnati. That's how I got to Cincinnati, Ohio. And let me tell you now how I got to Ashland, Kentucky. I had never heard of Ashland, Kentucky before. And I was walking down the street, and let me tell you what the Lord played in all of this. I was walking down the street one day. I had several job offers in Cincinnati, Ohio, but as I was walking down the street one day, a classmate of mine stopped me and asked me what was I doing. And I said, I'm looking for employment. He says, would you be interested in interviewing with Ashland? Ashland? I thought they were talking about Ashland, Ohio. And he says, well, no, I'm not talking about Ashland, Ohio. I'm talking about Ashland, Kentucky. So where is Ashland, Kentucky? And he told me in Kentucky, across the river from Ironton, Ohio. But I knew about Ironton because I had played football against Ironton, Ohio. And so when I came to here to interview for the job, and listen to tell you what role the Lord had to play. The people at Ashland got Reverend Childs and Mrs. Childs to take me around Ashland. And they made such an impact on me and my wife, we started to come back. Now they made an impact, but Ashland offered me more money than anybody in Cincinnati had offered me. And we came and we became an integral part of this community. Now at this particular time, when I first came to Ashland, Paul Blazer Sr. was chairman of Ashland Hall. And in these small towns, he was next to God Almighty. I'm telling you that what he said, he didn't ask anybody to do anything. All he did was say, do this, and it was done. Okay? So one day he called me up to his office and he says, Charles, how's things going? Well, I didn't want to say that I was the only black man in town that had to wear a suit every day. So I said, things are going fine, Mr. Blazer. He says, Charles, now you know you are living below the Mason-Dixon line. I said, yes, sir. He said, nobody in this company wanted me to hire you. This is strange. Did somebody tell you that nobody wanted to hire you? But he said, I did it anyway because I thought it was the right thing to do. But I didn't know at the time that he was going to be my mentor, that he was going to look after me all those years that I worked for Ashland, that he was going to make sure that I was taken care of while I was here. Now, the other thing, too, that he didn't know, that the part that New Hope Baptist Church played in my employment. Well, Mr. Blazer's manservant was Charles Anderson. He was head of the deacon board here. And so while he was brushing Mr. Blazer off and helping Mr. Blazer go to bed at night, he was listening. The head of the trustee board at that particular point was Leroy Harden. And so while Leroy Harden was Mr. Blazer's chauffeur, And so while he was driving Mr. Blazer around, he was listening. And so on Sunday morning, they would set me down and tell me what I needed to know. Who were the good guys and who were the bad guys at Ashland. So I had one leg up on most employees at that particular time. So one day, trying to get adjusted to this community, as you know, at this particular time, that no blacks worked at the refinery. I was the first black professional employee hired at Ashland. And then the black employees that Ashland had, they didn't have any benefits. So they were all working, and they worked temporarily, and they worked 36 hours or 32 hours. So I asked Mr. Blazer about giving them some benefits. And so he did. He put them on benefits. So he would sit down and talk to me, and I would talk to him about some of the things that I had wanted to do in this community. And one of the things that, and I'll tell you this, that at one point in time is that when I first got here, the church was not bricked. It was stucco. So they sent me downtown to see, I forget the man's name, to see if the man would give us some bricks. So I go downtown and I asked the man about giving us some bricks. He says, Charles, now if I give you the bricks, can y'all afford the mortar? So I never forgot that. I said to myself, at this particular time, I'm going to do everything I can to help make this church so they don't have to depend on going downtown, asking somebody for some meat or for some bricks or whatever. And so they used to have a program here, Men's Day. And Men's Day, when Men's Day was here at Newark, I couldn't believe it. Every dignitary in Ashland showed up for Men's Day. And they would march around and Mr. Judge Irons, Mr. Blazer, all of them come by. But then what I found out, that was all that we were willing to do for the black community, was come this one day and put whatever they put in this church. And that was it. So later on they said, Charles said it's time for us to we want to give something to your church. I said, why don't you give them some jobs? Give them some jobs. They can take care of all this other stuff. Hey, listen, we don't need you to march around. So they put me over Men's Day, and lo and behold, there was no Judge Irons. There was no Mr. Blazer. And folk were mad at me and said, you didn't invite Judge Irons? No. You didn't invite Mr. Blazer? No. I didn't invite any of them. So then, at that particular point in time, we started to talk about getting people jobs in places where they had never had jobs before.
That's right.
And at the refinery, I went to Mr. Blazer one day, and Leroy Harden, and then after me, ever since I've been on the job about going to the refinery. So I said, Mr. Blazer, I'm the only person down here that on payroll. So why don't you let Leroy go to the refinery? And so at that particular time, Leroy Harden, Big Ed Hughes, and Carl Heller, all three of them went to the refinery at the same time. Now why did I do this? The reason I did this is because Leroy had the backing of Mr. Blazer. Nobody was going to mess with Leroy at the refinery because he was Mr. Blazer's chauffeur. Big Ed Hughes, everybody loved him down. He worked down in the office of mailroom. And Carl Heller had worked out there, and everybody knew Carl Heller. And lo and behold, it's tough when you do these kind of things. Leroy was so happy at that particular time. And so Monday, I said, well, tell Leroy he's going to the refinery on Monday morning. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, I heard somebody knock on my door. I said, who is this knocking on my door at 6 o'clock in the morning? It was Leroy. Leroy said to me, said, Chuck, you know what, I thought about this overnight. And I like driving Mr. Blazer around. I said, Leroy, either you go to the refinery Monday or you don't have a job. He said, why? I said, ain't no more chauffeur's job. We eliminated the chauffeur's job on Friday. If you don't go to the refinery on Monday, you're going to be unemployed. So Leroy went to the refinery, and that next thing I know, Leroy had bought him a farm. He had horses, and cows, and everything out there in Boyd County. And the other thing that would happen is that very few blacks, I guess one black family, lived south of Central Avenue. And Stella and them moved on to Central Avenue, they built a house around the corner there. So when I went back to talk about housing, they called me in and they said, Charles, what about your housing? And I was living 2 doors down, renting 2 doors down from the church. They said, Charles, what about housing? And they said there were some nice places for colored folk over in Ohio. And that's where over there where Richard and they lived. And I said, I don't work in Ohio. And I don't want to live in Ohio. I work in Kentucky. So I didn't know it at the time, but I saw later on a memo that said I had talked to the vice president of personnel, wrote a letter to Mr. Blazer, and he said, I talked to Charles about housing, and he said that he didn't want to live in Ohio. Looks like we're going to have to build some houses. And by that time, we moved to Columbus, Ohio, but when I came back, they had built the Castlewood apartments. But then I was able to get a house. We started to move in to South Ashland at the particular time. And it was interesting that whenever a black person come to town looking for me, the police would always say, well, who are you looking for? They said, well, Charles Whitehead. Well, come on, we'll take you to his house. They knew exactly where I lived. One of the things that I was able to do coming back to Ashland, when I wasn't sure that I really wanted to come back at that particular time, but they said that they wanted me to come back. And when I came back, I had a new job, and the job, Mr. Blazer had died, but Art Atkins was president of Ashland at that particular time, and he offered me the job to be director of Equal Opportunity Affairs. So I asked him, Mr. What do you want me to do? He said, I don't know what to do, but I'll tell you when you do something wrong. So when I came back, one of the things that I did was I found every black professional couple in Ashland Oil that I could find and brought them to Ashland with me. That made an impact on that community, on this community, because they had never seen that many black professionals in Ashland Oil or in the community doing various jobs. So that was the important part. The other thing that we started a scholarship program, and this is when that I was accused of only hiring Baptists, because at that particular time, all the young people, we had this choir stand full of young people. And they sang and they worked in this community. One of the misgivings that I had was that I was just training people. We did not keep the pay to the point where people wanted to stay. Most people who were training for other oil companies, because after 2 or 3 years, somebody else would come in and offer more money, and we'd give them the training, and they moved on to other jobs. But during this period of time, we brought Dr. Rhodes here, and that made a big difference in this community as to the medical situation in this community. At one point in time, we had as many black doctors in this community as they had in Lexington, Kentucky. Nobody believed that, but we had as many black doctors because everybody in this community thought that all black doctors were like Dr. Rhodes. And he had the best bedside mannerism that you'd ever seen for a doctor. He is still my doctor. I still drive 145 miles from Cincinnati to Ashland to see him because he's got a stack of medical records this high on him. And I guess all you know, when in church I had open heart surgery at one point in time. And Charlie Rose told me this. He said, Ashland wanted to send me to Cleveland. And I was going to go to Cleveland. But he said, Charles, I can't go to Cleveland with you. But if you go to Lexington, I'll go with you. And I know the doctor there. So I said, okay. I went to Lexington. And he took off his job and went to Lexington and stayed with me while I had my procedure. Lo and behold, when I got out, I got to Boyd County line. After that, somebody taking your heart out and operating on it, putting tubes in you. I got out and thanked the Lord and kissed the ground. And I made it back to Boyd County. But the thing that I'd like to say, that this has always been a wonderful community. It's always been church-based. I brought my brother-in-law here, and he and Toby Talbot was probably the second two black football players to play for the Tomcats. And one day I was standing outside and heard the coach talking, and some other coach was saying, well, I'm glad, where'd you get these two black boys? He said, well, I got just enough not to mess it up. And they were the backfield. They had played really well for the Tomcats. And this started a thing that we had trying to get jobs and educate young people in Ashland. And I don't know if anybody had a child here at that particular time that we didn't get them jobs and we didn't try to send them off to college. Amen. And one of the things that they had before then, the best job that a kid could get working for Ashland was served at the Christmas party. And you would have thought that they were hiring somebody to be president of the company, and they go to work at the Christmas party. They'd go have the Christmas party over at the Armory, and they would allow some young people to go. But every summer, we would try to get jobs for folk to work so they could make some money to go back to school. And we'd also bring all of these folk, young people, to be trained into Ashland. And the good thing that I liked about Ashland at that particular time was that the young people, when I first started to bring them into this community, they stayed with families. And I wasn't so sure how that was going to work out at first. But the families took them in and they treated them as their own children. They loved these young people. They took care of them. You would think that they were their own grandchildren because for the most cases, the folk in that particular age group had left this community. And so that filled a void at that particular time. Now, those are some of the things that you know about. You know about the Boyd County NAACP, all right? Well, let me tell you about the NAACP in the state of Kentucky. There's a young man by the name of John Johnson who wanted to start the Conference of Branches of NAACPs in the state of Kentucky. Well, all things black at that particular time, they sent me. So Standard Oil of Kentucky had a meeting in Louisville, and they set me down, and John made his pitch about starting NAACP branches throughout Kentucky. And so Standard Oil said, John, we'll give you $15,000. Well, I said, I didn't know I could do it or not, but I said, if Standard Oil can do it, that's sure Ashland can do it. So I got up and I said, well, if Standard Oil give you $15,000, Ashland will give you $15,000. So I made that commitment and didn't know where I was going to get this $15,000 from. But when I got back, they said, that's fine. And that started the Conference of Branches, and I guess it's still going pretty strong here in Ashland today. It's been a good thing for this community, but before then, they used to call Ashland, for as far as black folk was concerned, heaven. And I'm saying, well, why are you calling this heaven? Because at a particular time, I used to do taxes, and I found that the average black man in town made good wages because they did domestic and work outside of working for Armco that allowed them to make more money than some of the average people that worked in this community. I will say this about this church. It's always been an integral part of my life. My children, Charles Whitehead Sr. was born here in Ashland, and he's looked like he's carrying on the work of this church, the work that I left here. You see why I got up and moved over here? That's just be my seat as chair of the trustee board here in Ashland. Now, these are some of the things that you know about, but some of the things that you don't know about is Paul Patton, who was the first governor elected 2 times in the state of Kentucky, offered me a job as being personnel director for the state of Kentucky. Well, when I found out what they were making, I turned it down because I was making more money in Ashland. So I told him, I said, well, I'll tell you what, there's a gentleman by the name of Bob Peters who worked with me at Ashland. I got him the job. He became the first personnel director in the state of Kentucky. That's one of the things that you probably didn't know. The second thing I will tell you about is that I did the welcoming address the second time the Governor Patton was elected to office. I did the welcome at his inaugural. The third thing that you probably don't know about is that I was chair of the Council on Higher Education for the state of Kentucky for 3 consecutive terms. Now, once they found out that I did 3 terms, they limited the terms to 2 terms. So I hold a record of being 3 terms chair of the Council on Higher Education. Let me tell you how important that was. While I was chair, I would never allow them to raise the interest level standards for Kentucky institutions from an 18 ATC score to 22, which they wanted to do. Because I knew that the average black child who made 18 could do college work. And what they wanted to do at that particular time was to cut down, they had Kentucky State and whatever. But I didn't let them do it on my watch. They didn't get a chance to do that on my watch. But Kentucky State played an integral part at that particular time on New Hope. We would bring the choir from Kentucky State here to sing. Twice a year, they would sing all over the community. We sent kids to Kentucky State. And Chucky went to Kentucky State. The Brown boys went to Kentucky State, and they stayed, and they all graduated from Kentucky State. Mrs. Johnson, who was the pianist here at the time, there was a scholarship in her name at Kentucky State University. And so we had an integral part in all of this. Now, one of the things that you didn't know is trying to open up some of the things they had in Ashland. I wanted to join the JCs. I didn't want to join, but somebody asked me to join the JCs when I first moved to Ashland. And I said, yeah, I'd like to join the JCs, and I filled out the application. I didn't hear from anybody. So I stopped the man who gave me the application, and I said, what happened to my application for the JCs? He said, Charles said, I asked them about your application, I turned it in, and they said, we're not ready. This town was not ready for you at this particular point in time. So I wrote a letter to the JCs, and I used their own creed. And that Thursday, that was on Tuesday, I wrote the letter, and on Thursday, I was a member of the JCs. And now being a member of the JCs put me in touch with a lot of good guys because they took me all over the state of Kentucky. And I remember that we had a meeting in Lexington, at the hotel in Lexington, which was still segregated at the particular time. And they called the hotel up and they said, Charles Whitehead is a member of the Ashland JCs. If he doesn't stay in this hotel, none of us are going to stay. So I got to stay in a hotel before it even got integrated. So these are some of the kinds of things that went on in this town. Hard to borrow money, hard to do a lot of things. And when I came back, you know where I moved out in South Ashland. I know that, I'm trying to think, somebody else moved out to South Ashland. I think it was Phyllis and her husband moved out to South Ashland before we moved back to town. But this opened up the whole area where blacks could move to anywhere in the area that they wanted to move. Now, how did this happen? When I came back, one of my responsibilities was housing. And so I go to this realtor and he started to show me around town, but I found out that every house that he showed me, he would call up the people and tell them how not to sell me the house. How not to sell me the house. And so when I found out that, I told him about it and I'm saying, well, do you like working for Ashland? He said, yeah. Do you understand that I'm in charge of housing? He said, yeah. I said, well, maybe if I don't get the house that I want, maybe you won't have this job anymore. Of course, naturally, every month that I would get a Christmas card, birthday card, Valentine's card, and we kept him on the payroll forever. But before I take my seat, I will say this, that this church has been an integral part of my life. It's been an integral part of the black community. We traveled. We went to Florida. We went to Atlanta. And that's a good thing when we travel. Now, I'll tell you about one trip that I promised that I would never take again. That was a trip that I took all the kids to Kings Island. And it was so hot and miserable up there. And I thanked the Lord. I said, Lord, if you remove me from the seat, I promise you, I'm never going to Kings Island again. And I have not been back to Kings Island again. So those are some of the good things and some of the bad things. But I take a look at this particular church and I say that the way the world is turning, and I know that we accept everybody, but at one point in time, we always thought about keeping New Hope as a black church. But I'm not so sure in the future if we can survive on that premises. But the Lord, he doesn't have anything to do with color. Huh? He doesn't have anything to do. So if we are going to survive, we're going to have to take everybody that comes in here. Okay? Those who want to worship, let them come in and join that. Over the years, we have had a few white members in this church. The fellow who lived next door, we got along fine. But we bought all of this property around the church. And one of the things that we left this church in good hands. You see all these chandeliers? We put them in here. All these covered seats, we did it. And it still looks good today. I'm going to come in here. It's a good looking church with sound families, good people. I thank you for all that you've done in my life to make my life worthwhile. Now, at one point in time when I left Ashland, I had risen to the point where I was president of the Ashland Foundation. I had the only title of president in the whole company except the chairman of the board. So thank you, New Hope, for all you've done in my life, you've done in my family's life. And young Charles Jr., maybe I didn't, they tried to get me to preach, but maybe I always sat on this side because I never wanted to be a deacon. So I always wanted to be on the trustee side. So maybe you over on the deacon side, maybe your next step might be up there. Thank you.